It's Tuesday, the 2nd of August, 2022. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories to race through in 5 minutes, so we better jump into it. Story number 1, the fall in home prices in capital cities has accelerated during July, with falls now in 5 of the 8 capital cities.
Not good news for homeowners. On average, prices fell 1.4% last month in Australia's capital cities, though there were bigger drops in Sydney, Melbourne and Hobart. Prices fell 2.2% in Sydney. Now, that's 6 months in a row where prices have been declining. It was the biggest monthly fall, that 2.2%, since the mid-1980s, and Sydney home prices are now down by more than 5% from their February high. Melbourne prices were off 1.5%. That's 5 months in a row of lower prices. Hobart was off 1.5%. Canberra and Brisbane went backwards. Adelaide, Perth and Darwin all did a bit better. House prices are falling more than unit prices, but of course, they also rose more during the boom. Now, interest rates are what's really matters at the moment, but there's more to it. Poor affordability, a rise in new listing, a shift in household spending from goods to services, cost of living pressures, a collapse in consumer confidence. All that stuff's going on at the moment. The big question is, how much further will prices fall? Everyone wants to know the answer to that. Our own resident economist, Stephen Koukoulas, thinks peak to trough, house prices will fall less than 10%. And that's because there's plenty of good stuff going on in the economy at the moment. Think the labour market. Others disagree. AMP chief economist Sean Aylmer reckons it could be closer to 20%, pointing out that the rise in interest rates has hit harder, faster this time around.
Okay, on to story number 2, Sean, and we've talked a lot about the cost of living crisis and rising gas prices has been a fairly significant part of that. Now, the competition watchdog has recommended that the federal government take steps towards triggering LNG export controls to make sure there's enough supply to the local market.
Yes, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission report says the government should trigger something called the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, that's a mouthful, in response to about a 10% shortfall along the East Coast in terms of domestic demand. Now, the ACCC wants big producers to increase supply to the domestic market. Resources Minister Madeleine King yesterday said the government is readying the initial step towards using the mechanism. The producers, not wanting to face mandated sales, of course, have responded saying there will be no shortfall in supply next year. Let's hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Story number 3, Sean, this is a really interesting one. Analysis by mortgage broker Lendy shows that loyal customers are earning the big banks around $4.5 billion amid rising interest rates. Why? Because they won't change lenders.
Yes, the moral of this story is clear. Shop around even if you already have a mortgage. According to the Financial Review, the so-called loyalty tax is a result of customer apathy. Customers don't change mortgages and the big banks know it. So they charge higher rates to customers already on their books. And then banks offer potential and new customers lower interest rates to win the business. That cohort of customers can get rates almost 1 percentage points below what loyal customers are paying, according to Lendy. It doesn't sound fair, but it probably does sound right.
Yeah, true. Story number 4, Sean, for months now, we have been talking about returning to work in the CBDs. Now, investment bank UBS has predicted that the number of people working in the centre of the big cities will never be the same again.
That's right. The investment bank estimates that the number of people working in CBD offices will be up to 15% lower in the future. The bank says working from home has become a structural shift because of the COVID experience. Hybrid ways of working are now commonplace. Also, big businesses have flexible working arrangements in place. UBS says white-collar workers will only spend an average of 3.6 days a week in the office in the future, compared to 4.2 days previously. That'll have a big impact on lots of things, from the big real estate companies through to infrastructure groups like Transurban.
All right. Now, Sean, story number 5. Over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of pretty kind of scary headlines about the Chinese property sector. Why is this all so important and what's happened?
Well, the property sector accounts for about 1/3 of output in China. And of course, when they build buildings, they need roads and bridges. That really matters to Australia because we export iron ore. They need iron ore for those roads and bridges and infrastructure. So whatever happens in the property industry in China is of major significance to Australia. Now, contract sales at China's 100 biggest developers fell 29% in July as buyers nationwide engaged in a mortgage payment boycott. Basically, home buyers aren't making mortgage payments on unfinished housing projects. Total sales in the sector for the first 7 months of the year are down 49%. The property market in China is in crisis, and that is not good for Australia.
That's a big, big story, that one. There we go, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 2nd of August, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough for you, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.